Hey friends, thanks for jumping in on the Northwest Youth Podcast, where we're believing that the voices and experiences right here from the Pacific Northwest will equip our youth ministers and youth ministries to reach students and bring the hope of Jesus to our communities. Welcome today. We've got Pastor Moe Wood with us from Faith Tri-Cities, where he serves the youth pastor. Pastor Moe, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
But more than thank you for being here for this conversation. I just appreciate you. Love the way Moe leads one of our events. He leads our East Side Youth Conference, so he's an event director extraordinaire.
Something like that.
But more than that, I know that you love being Jesse Wood's husband and the father of 3 boys.
That's right.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about your role in your local church, and what are you and your family excited for this Christmas season?
Yeah, so 3 boys, like Pastor Zach said, 7, 4, and 2. So
you're not bored.
No, never a dull moment, and there's no deep sitting in my house, that's for sure. It's always like, what's on fire? What's that smell? Who's crying now? So
why is it quiet?
Yeah, that's when it's the most dangerous for sure. So, but love my boys. They're a ton of fun. My wife is a killer boy mom. Like, she just rocks it and she loves it. And so I'm probably most excited for just Christmas morning with our boys. My 4-year-old especially is our like over the top, super energetic, like excited.
Oh yeah.
Pee his pants, so excited type kid. So
we'll pray about that.
Please do. So, but yeah, man, family's doing great. We're excited. Christmas is here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. I thought about you drove over the pass this morning for this conversation. I thought, man, probably no snow this morning.
No, just wind. Lots of wind, lots of rain, a few Teslas. So
yeah, nothing better than a snowy drive over the pass at Christmas time.
Yeah, well, you'd think, man. We did a trip back from the west side back to the Tri-Cities last year, and it was like whiteout. They literally closed the pass right behind us, and there were semis like turning sideways on I-90, and it was crazy.
So it was memorable.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's always good.
I told my wife, because she was driving, just like, don't stop, and no matter what happens in front of you, just keep going. Just drive past it. They'll be fine.
They'll be fine. That's right. We're not stopping.
Yeah, that's right.
That's too good. That is too good. We lived, for our first 2 years when we were married, lived in Ellensburg, and we drive over. And so we've got all kinds of past stories that are just crazy. But we didn't come to talk about the weather on the past. We came today because we're going to have a conversation about ministry planning.
Yeah.
Their hope is, the goal is that in these conversations we can help one another and be inspired, or even grab one little nugget from each conversation that will help us serve in our local church better. And one of the things that I know that you are big on is your planning. Actually, I've even seen in your office, like you have like 4 months kind of at a glance, all planned out. Have you always been that way?
I wouldn't say so. No, I wouldn't say so. I think definitely in college I put the pro in procrastination and had the typical college experience, but have definitely learned the value of just being organized and always working ahead, planning ahead. And I think over time, I don't know if it was just God shaping and molding me this way, but have become very forward thinking and very strategic. And maybe that part's always kind of been part of my personality and stuff. But no, I would say this is definitely a tool that we've developed over the last almost 8 years that we've been using it and have seen the value in it. And so there's great value in being organized and planning ahead. And
So you didn't start that way, but obviously it evolved over time.
Sure.
And one of the knocks sometimes with planning too far ahead is people say, well, how do you leave room if you're going to plan ahead for God to course correct or drop something in there?
Right.
How do you address that?
Yeah, I heard a pastor talk about this a little bit in Northern California, and he actually said that spontaneity is the reward for preparation. Okay. That when you are planned out far enough in advance and you know what your schedule is going to look like, you know where the pockets of your time are, you can actually be a lot more strategic and a lot more present. Like, one of the things I was thinking about is before we got into this whole ministry calendar thing is I used to double book myself all the time. And there's no worse feeling than realizing as you're driving to a coffee appointment that you're like, crud, now I got to text somebody and be like, oh man, can we meet a little later? And so I think those types of things definitely help, but definitely, when your schedule is already set for the next couple of months and you know what you're going to be getting into, you've already taken into account a few things. You can be a little bit more spontaneous and you can be a lot more present when you're with people. So
you'd say the schedule actually serves and creates more space for connection than less.
I think so. And especially when ministry is really busy and really hectic, it also kind of creates boundaries around times that you've set aside to be with family or times where you're working on a specific event. And so not only does it, yes, create more quality opportunities for you to connect with people, but it also sets boundaries around things to protect like your family time. So that's something that
So let's take us through the process then.
Yeah.
Like, how far in advance do you begin to kind of, even make sketch notes? Again, the card that I saw had 4 months on it. I think it was September through the end of the year. One of the things that I thought of, my first thought was, because part of it's just my lens as a parent with a senior in high school, is how great for parents.
Oh, yeah.
If you communicate that information.
Yeah.
Because, when I get my kids' basketball schedule, volleyball schedule, like that comes out like the first day of practice, and I get it for the next, 12 to 16 weeks.
Right.
And there's no question as to when those are. And so I think, man, why don't we do the same in ministry? Yeah. So that was my first thought, was just kind of that parent lens. But take us, would you, through like that process, start to finish, in creation of that, from the series formation, because I think you looked like you addressed a couple series in that time, to events, how you put that together.
Yeah, well, really, first and foremost, I got to say that this is absolutely a play that I stole out of like a school district's playbook. The schools are doing this, sports teams are doing this, and so it's something that I kind of stole from them and adapted to our ministry and stuff. But also, like, the whole thing is about over communication. I think just in general, especially today with the saturation of emails and Zoom meetings and text messages and stuff like that, and all the ways that people are trying to maintain their schedule, you have to over communicate what you're doing. Like, that's so and so important. And so that's really where we started. But like some of the things that we include, and I'll kind of tell you like how to put one of these together, but some of the things that we include, like you said, is sermon series. So we do sermon series for 2 months. So that's like 6 a year, roughly. There might be some different ones, give and take, but we set them up every 2 months. We'll do a sermon series, and that gives us like 6 to 8 weeks realistically to really drive those home and create small group questions and follow up and all different kinds of things that drive in the value of whatever that sermon series is. But it also gives parents a heads up of the things that we're going to be talking about in advance. And whenever we meet with parents, because we do like parent meetings and stuff like that, we'll give them a heads up like, hey, these are the messages we're going into. These are some of the big ideas and some of the topics that we're going to be addressing. We want to give you a heads up so that when your kids come home and you ask them like, hey, how was youth night or whatever? How was youth service? Oh, it was fine. What did you guys talk about? I don't know. Well, actually, I think I know what you talked about. So, that's one of the things that we do. Youth services. So let's just take it like from top to bottom, some of the stuff that we put on there. So the times that we are meeting, the times that we're not meeting. One of the reasons why this is so effective is because when we were on the west side doing student ministry, we were meeting on Sunday nights. And so Mother's Day, Father's Day, Easter, sometimes Christmas, depending on the holiday and kind of how things fell, there were going to be nights that we would meet. Well, in the past, prior to the this whole event calendar thing, they didn't know when that was.
Sure.
Or if you communicated, there was a whole bunch of people that missed it, and so you had people showing up to drop their kids off for a youth service that wasn't happening. And so we include those dates, small groups. So we had a ton of small groups, like so many small groups for middle schoolers, high schoolers, guys, gals, mixed small groups, missions,
middle schoolers
stuff.
that play the bagpipes, middle schoolers that don't play the
Right.
bagpipes. Yeah.
We gotta get those bagpipe players in there. So when and where and for what audience those small groups were for, special events. So we just came out of fall, so like when we did like Bob's Corn Maze or something, something like that, we would include stuff like where to drop off your kids and where to pick up your kids, the cost. When we did things like summer camp or winter retreat, we would actually put on there the deadlines and how to register for those camps on the calendar so they can see weeks in advance, like, oh man, I need to sign up by this date.
And so, just to interrupt you real quick, so this is obviously, not only are you sending, how are you communicating this? Is it on your church calendar? Is it on, are they in a part of a mail group? How is it that you're getting the information? Because we all have plenty of students in our youth ministry that like they dodge those information cards, like, they purposely, doesn't matter if they could win an Xbox, they're not going to fill one out.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple different ways. We do print them. So once everything, is good to go, we'll print them. We'll put them in our information counter. We'll put them in the main office, kind of where the secretary of the front office lady is. We had our own little like kiosk out in the lobby that we put them down in our youth rooms. Every youth space that we had, I carried some in my car. I had some at the house. And then anytime I would be connected with a new family or a new student, I would just blitz them out as much as possible. The other thing that we did is we digitized it. So we would actually take it and create like a Dropbox link and then share it. We have like a mass text subscription. So anybody can, like parents and students can subscribe to our mass text, and we would actually blast it out on that as well. So you can just have it on your phone. We would put it in the church calendar. We just like made it available everywhere all the time. And we're just constantly like pushing it out. The great thing about it is after a while, after making these calendars, parents were like demanding them. They were like, when's the next calendar coming out? Because like you said, they're trying to schedule sporting events and school events, and you got family stuff and vacation and holidays. And so they want to know, when
well, and think about what they're actually saying. We want our kids to be part of this.
Right.
We don't want other things to interfere, and we want to prioritize this, but we can't if we don't have the information.
Right, exactly.
So good.
Exactly. And one of the things I was thinking about as I was talking about this with my wife last night is, I think at times we've all struggled to get our own people to our own things. It's like we're going to have this event. We've been advertising it for a while, and then the event comes, and it's like, where are our own people? Why aren't they here? And I think planning ahead gives our students and our families something to look forward to. Because if we don't put it out there far in advance, other things will kind of populate their schedule and kind of take over, dominate their schedule. And so you got to give people stuff to look forward to. So
yeah, that's so good. That's so good. So when you let's talk about the sermon series.
Okay.
Prep.
Sure.
Right. How do you discern what you're going to preach on? Or do you do alignment with your church, or do you have the freedom to kind of dream your own?
Yeah, so we definitely have the freedom to dream our own, but it's also something that we do in partnership, I hope. I mean, my prayer is with the Holy Spirit. So typically what that looks like is, again, months in advance before we publish anything, is I'll meet with my team, and we'll have a meeting to talk about just felt needs in our student ministry. Like, what are you guys hearing? What are the conversations that you're having in your small groups? What are some of the things that you're seeing on social media? What are some of the things that you're praying with in our response times that students are struggling with? And we'll just make a list and pray over the list and start to kind of like whittle it down to just a few things before we do a sermon series. What is most surprising to me about that, after doing it for so many years, is I'll be sitting in a church service on a Sunday morning not knowing what our lead pastor is going to preach on, and he'll preach on the exact same thing that I'm about to preach that same night. And he used to do it all the time. I thought there were like hidden cameras or mics in my office or something. Like, it was creepy.
You're saving your sermons to a Dropbox, and he's just
right, exactly. Yeah, he hacked in. Yeah. And so that's what we did. And some of the best sermon series ideas have actually come not from my own like kind of running document I have on my phone of ideas, but it's from those conversations with my team.
So good.
And with my staff. And then we would just start with just like an overview, and then go to Scripture and find where Scripture's already talking about those types of things, so that Scripture is like the main thing, and then we just kind of start laying out outlines. Here's the key text for the next couple of weeks, here's our objective. One of the things that has been a working experiment just for me personally is preaching 1-point sermons, and it's taken a long time, because preaching is definitely a skill. But preaching just 1 point, if I had one thing that students walked away with that night, what would it be? Yeah. And so we developed those types of ideas as well. And then just throw it into a calendar, start preaching away and stuff. Again, like I said, we do 2 months at a time because we want to make sure that we give ourselves enough time to explain things thoroughly. But in those 2-month time periods, we also set aside an entire night just for reflection. So here's all the things we've talked about. Maybe you've missed a few. Let's bring you up to speed, etc. We'll get a bunch of really good talking points into the hands of our leaders, but then we'll set aside an entire night just for reflection.
And you're talking about this is for your whole youth ministry. So it's kind of a recap of everything to reflect on the entire series.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. So
creating that space.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. How long did it take you to develop your current system?
Oh, man. It's definitely trial and error. So we started with a 1-year calendar because I thought, hey, if we can plan out like an entire year, we're sitting pretty. What I discovered is if you plan too far ahead, you will run against things when like your lead pastor comes to you and says like, hey, we need to shut everything down. We're doing a week of prayer and fasting, or something like that. Or, hey, we got a speaker coming in and I want the students there. And so whatever you had planned needs to go. And so we whittled it down from 12 months to 4 months at a time. So it covers like January to April, May to August, and then September to December. kind of following the biggest like trimesters of the year.
Sure.
Formatting is kind of something that we ran into because we're putting out a lot of information, but we don't want it to seem overwhelming. And so making sure that the format, which is so dumb, we're talking about formatting, but it's, uniform across the entire document.
Sure, it matters.
You want it to look clean and consistent. So, but that was really good. And like even right now, I am starting to put some work into our next ministry calendar, or event calendar is what we call it, for January through April. And so getting my team involved, we're going to do some like girls only events, some middle school overnighters, stuff like that. They're ideas that I've gotten from my staff, and it just kind of goes into a big document, and then we pick and choose what we want to do and go for it.
That's so good.
Yeah.
That's so good. And then, when you're talking about 4 months in advance, you're only talking about doing this big bulk of work 3 times a year.
Basically, yeah.
I mean, it's,
yeah.
You're constantly feeding what you're going to utilize to form it, in your team meetings and stuff like that as you're listening and taking notes. But really, the actual time is through 3 big chunks a year to where you're actually looking at.
Right. It's a lot of work up front.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we learned, kind of going back to your other question, is like before you publish or print anything, if you're going to do like a bowling night or something like that, you better call the bowling alley and set that up and pay a deposit, get your name in super far in advance, because the worst thing that you can do is schedule something and then not follow through with it, right? And so we learned to do reservations. We actually would back up like all of our summer camp signups to be the early registration deadline for our group, because like we get to control essentially when the signups come in. I mean, you think about it. Take an event like summer camp, for example. We'll start promoting that in the spring before the summer even gets here. Like we'll put the summer camp dates at least at the bottom of the calendar for this next 4-month chunk, but we get to control when those signups happen and when we start collecting those registrations, so that it takes a lot of stress off of my team and I, and off of my admin, and after our facilities people. So yeah, working ahead, man.
That's
a big
so
deal.
Good. That is so good. Well, this conversation talking about planning and all the different pieces of it, there's no way that we could cover all of it in one podcast. But would you be willing, like if a youth pastor reached out and said, hey, would you be willing to talk them through even some more in depth with your own process, and share some wisdom? If a youth pastor listening to this said, man, I want to spend just a 30-minute phone call with him or jump on FaceTime, you open for something like that? Oh,
absolutely. And we have a couple of different blank form templates, I guess, that are semi-formatted already. And so if that was something that would really help somebody, we'd be willing to blast those out too.
So great. That's awesome. Well, thanks for being on today.
Of course.
Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
I'm excited. I know this is a big area for so many youth pastors because scheduling can feel overwhelming. But what you really kind of just expressed is that you actually get a piece in your own rhythms because you take the time to do the work up front.
Yeah.
So good.
It's really, really good. It's a great tool. Your families will love it. Your students will love it. Your pastor will probably love it. So yeah, it's good stuff.
It's a win all the way around. Awesome. Thanks, Mo.
Yeah, my pleasure.